If you want to get stronger glutes, but you don't have a bunch of time to do several different exercises, what's the one best glute strengthening exercise that you can do to get the most bang out of the exercise time that you do have available? There are so many different glute strengthening exercises that it can be overwhelming, from squats to lunges, deadlifts, straight-legged deadlifts, bridges, hip thrusts, leg raises. There are so many different options available, and most videos or articles that study the best glute strengthening exercise use research-based terms, which are based on something called the percentage of maximum voluntary contraction, or percent MVC. But the things that research studies don't take into account is just because you can produce a lot of force out of a muscle or activate a muscle with a certain exercise, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate into helping you in everyday life. And so whenever I prescribe someone an exercise, I first look at what's the benefit, what's the goal to get out of that exercise. And for most people, it's not getting a certain percent MVC. Most people watching this video probably want to be able to walk or run better, go up and down stairs, get up from the floor, squat, or maybe just look better in a pair of jeans. But whatever your goal is for getting stronger glutes, you want to first think about what the end goal is, because that's going to dictate what the best exercise is for you. Now, if you think about the way that most people use their glutes in everyday life, it's to push off when they're either walking or running, to get up from the floor, or to go upstairs. And so the exercise that you use should use the muscle in a way that you functionally use the muscle in your everyday life. And for that reason, I think the lunge is the #1 best glute strengthening exercise. And it's not to say that those other exercises aren't good, but if you're short on exercise time and you want to maximize your benefit out of the exercise time you have available, the lunge is probably the best exercise to do that. And the reason why is the lunge activates all 3 of your gluteal muscles. We talk about the glutes, so to speak, as if they're one thing, but you actually have 3 gluteal muscles. Your gluteus maximus, the big one that you can kind of see that most people think of as their butt. And that muscle is a hip extensor. And what hip extension means is moving your leg backwards, either from a neutral position into a position of hip extension, or from moving your hip from a flexed position back towards neutral. Both of those are hip extension. The other 2 muscles, the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus, are more over the side of your hip. And those muscles are hip abductor muscles. What abduction means is moving a limb, in this case your leg, away from the midline. But the way that we use our hip abductors in everyday life is not for hip abduction, but rather to balance ourselves on a stable leg and abduct the pelvis, or rather just to hold the pelvis level when you're walking, when you're running, or when you're going up and down stairs. And the lunge addresses all 3 of those muscles in ways that you would functionally use it. So first, for the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus, the squat is a great exercise, but because you're using both legs, you're balanced from side to side. You don't have to control yourself in a side-to-side plane. So the squat is a great exercise for strengthening your gluteus maximus and your gluteus medius and minimus, but it doesn't mimic that balance aspect that you need for the way that you use your glutes in real life. So when you do a lunge, if we're looking from the front view, you want to step forwards, and you want to take a fairly large step. Then as you're going down, you want to make sure that your knee is in alignment with your toes. Now, your toes may or may not necessarily point straight ahead, but you want your knee to go over top of your toes regardless of what direction your toes happen to be pointing. Now, for most people, the natural instinct is for your knee to cave in that way, into a position of hip adduction going towards the midline. And so what you need to do to activate your gluteus medius and gluteus minimus, and to some extent your gluteus maximus as well, is turn your knee outwards. And so that's sort of a rotation as well as an abduction of your hip. Then no matter how far down you go, you want to make sure you keep that hip abduction and don't allow yourself to go inwards. Many people who are watching this, they may have knee pain or knee arthritis, and they may think, well, I can't do a lunge. Everybody can do a lunge. You just may not be able to do as deep a lunge. So this may be a lunge for some people. This may be a lunge for some people. But you only go as deeply as you can, one, without pain, and two, with proper technique. So if you start noticing you go down farther and your knee starts coming inwards, then you want to stop at that point because you're no longer using correct technique. So that's the front view. Now from the side view, you can see more of the hip extension component of it. So this back hip is in position of extension, but it's the front hip that's doing the movement of extension. It's moving from a flex position towards more of a neutral position, like you would do if you're getting up from the ground or if you're going up or down stairs. Now, when you're doing a lunge, you use both your quadricep muscle as well as your gluteus maximus to help control the up and down motion. Now, the more forwards you put your weight on your toe, the more of a quad dominant lunge this becomes. So this is mostly knee extension or quad force that I'm using right here. And this is a great quad exercise, but if you're trying to strengthen your glutes, and particularly if you have knee pain, this isn't necessarily what you want. The more quad force you use, the more compression force it puts down on your knee. And that can create knee pain such as patellofemoral pain or knee arthritis pain or patellar tendonitis. So if you're looking to do a lunge to strengthen your glutes, you want to keep your weight more on the heel. And if you're standing by something for balance, you should be able to pick your toes up if you've got enough weight on your heel. And you want to keep your toes on the ground when you're actually doing the exercise, but if you can't pick your toes up off the floor, then you probably have too much weight on your toes. So stand by something for balance. Make sure you can pick your toes up off the floor. If you can't, get your weight a little bit more back. And you should have a fairly wide stance for this because a narrow stance is going to put your weight too far up on the toes. You get a fairly wide stance and then come down as far as you can, again, comfortably. You can't see it from this angle, but you want to turn your knee out in that direction towards abduction and external rotation and keep the weight on your heel. So you're pushing your heel through the ground. Go down as deeply as you feel comfortable going, whether that's this far or this far or this far. Now, some things you may notice if you have stiff hip flexor muscles, particularly a rectus femoris muscle, you may start to notice as you get farther down that you feel a stretch in the front of this thigh or even start to feel knee pain in your back leg. And if that's the case, the lunge is probably still a good exercise for you, but you don't want to go to the point where you start having that pain. Now, that itself actually helps strengthen your glutes because your glutes are a hip extensor. Your rectus femoris is a hip flexor. And so if that rectus femoris is stiff, your glutes have to work against the rectus femoris stiffness in order to extend your hip. And so you're making your glutes stronger by decreasing the internal resistance that's coming from your quads. So to see the exercise again in a stationary position, get a wide straddle, put your weight mostly on the front leg, enough that you could pick your toes up if you needed to, and then go down as deeply as you can comfortably, whether that's just part way down or whether it's all the way down to the floor. If that's too easy for you, you can start adding hand weights to add further resistance. Now, another more functional way to do the lunge is more of a moving or walking lunge, because that's sort of what we do when we're walking or when we're running, is we do one foot right after another. We don't do all the repetitions on one leg and then all the repetitions on the other leg. The other aspect of the walking lunge is as you go to take a step to the next leg, you have to balance yourself over the first leg, which helps strengthen your gluteus medius and gluteus minimus a little bit more. So for the walking lunge, you're going to start out taking a step forward, get your weight on the heel, come down as far as you can, whether it's here, and back up to the next step, there, back up to the next step, there, back up to the next step. Or whether you can go down a little bit farther and you go into a full lunge, back up, balance, next step, lunge, balance, next step, lunge, and balance. So the walking lunge is actually a better, more functional way to do the lunge where you're alternating legs, you're having to balance on one leg, and you're still strengthening your gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, and gluteus minimus. Now again, that's not to say that there aren't other great glute exercises to do, and it is often good to include variety in your workout, doing squats, hip thrusts, bridges, single leg balance with hip abduction, which actually works the glute that you're standing on more so than it does the leg you're kicking with. But if you're looking for just the number one best, most time efficient exercise to strengthen your glutes, it's probably the walking lunge. So hopefully you did find this helpful. If you are in the St. Louis area and you need more help to prevent back pain, hip pain, knee pain by getting stronger glutes, we'd be happy to help you out here at More for Life. And if you're watching this from somewhere else, but you found the video helpful, give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you can get notified of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.